There we go. Okay, so we are recording. And like I mentioned, guys, just a reminder, anything that you guys are seeing on the split screen, you can only see the split screen during the live portion. So I'll just pull this in real quick to remind you what we're looking at on our split screen. All right, we're going to talk about converting feet and inches and decimal feet. All right, essentially, we're going to be working with whole numbers, fractions, and decimals. Pretty much everything that we've gone through up until now. All right, so this is on your split screen at the moment. So essentially what we got there on the top is it's letting you know that 1 foot is equal to 12 inches. And just for a quick reminder, right, here's my 1 foot mark. You guys see it, the 12? Right? I should have pulled up my imperial tape measure only. I've got a combo right here. But there's 12 inches or 1 foot. All right? So 12 inches equals 1 foot. Therefore, 2 feet would be 24 inches. All right? But as I mentioned, when we're dealing with multiple fractions and things like that, it can be time consuming and sometimes difficult and confusing to calculate using fractions and mixed numbers and so on and so forth. So we can convert from, say, you can see on the page there, we can convert, say, 10 feet 9.5 inches into something that's going to be easier to calculate, right? We're still calling this 10 feet, but instead of saying 10 feet 9.5 inches, this is what's called a decimal foot. It is strictly all in feet. So it's 10.7916. And I'll walk you through how we're going to do this. Again, it's on that side screen. So let me write this number. So we're working with, and I'm going to zoom in a tiny bit here. Apologies. I realize as a lefty, I tend to turn my page a little bit. All right. So 10 foot, and notice my little ticky up here. Okay? The small ticky, 1 ticky. Okay, we'll keep with our 10 feet. So 1 ticky is 10 feet. If I was to go 10 and put 2 tickies, that's 10 inches. 2 very different values, right? There's 10 inches, or 10, and these 2 little tickies, and 10 feet, well, this is only a 6 foot long tape measure, so it doesn't show it. So understand it's very important to make sure that you are putting the right notation. All right? So moving down there, 10 feet. I'm going to put this dash here as a spacer, right, to split the feet from the inches. So 10 feet and 9.5 inches. Oh shit. Sorry, my computer's battery's low. There we go. How's the other one doing? Better plug that in. There we go. Okay, so again, this is going to be hard for me to calculate. Although it's going to be very easy if someone yelled out, hey, measure me a piece that's 10 foot 9.5. That's easier than yelling out, go measure me something that's 10.9 or 10.7916 decimal feet. The decimal feet is more beneficial for, like I said, calculating. And the way that we're going to do this, right? So, decimal feet. Well, right now, 10 is our whole feet. So that's not going to change. All right, so our answer is, as you can see there on our side screen, is going to be 10 point something 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 feet. So we need to actually now convert the 9.5. We've put that whole number, right? Just like we were working with our wholes and our mixes. We put the whole number in a room by itself. So now we work on this 9.5 inches. Okay? So first things first, I like to start from the right-hand side. Okay? And what I'm going to do is take that half and turn that half into a decimal. Remember how we said that, right? It's essentially 1 over 2, or 1 divided by 2. And we get that 0.5. We can then add the whole inch, right, the 9, to the 0.5 to get 9.5 inches. Are you guys following so far? Everything clear? Clear as mud, as they say. Right? So now that we have the 9.5 inches into something that's easier to calculate, i.e. a decimal, we're now going to take that decimal inch, that 9.5 decimal inches, I call it decimal inches because of the decimal. We need to turn that into a fraction, or a decimal of a foot, right? A portion of a foot. Now, remember that 1 foot equals 12 inches. So essentially, when I'm moving back and forth here, let me write this here. If I'm going from feet into inches, I'm going to times by 12, right? So if I had to change this 10 feet into inches, right, I will times it by 12, and I'm going to get a bigger number than 10. But if I'm going from inches into feet, instead of multiplying, I'm going to then divide by 12. I want to take that large number of inches and bring it down to a smaller amount of feet, essentially. So that being said, again, take a look at this 9.5. In order to get this inches into feet, right, inches to feet, I'm going to take 9.5 and divide it by 12, right? 9.5 divided by 12, and I get 0.791666666, repeating essentially. So we're just going to stop at the first 6 and write it as, this equals 0.7916 feet. Don't forget that ticky, right? So it's showing you that 9.5 inches is less than a whole foot, right? Less than a whole foot. And now that I've got my inches into decimals of a foot, I just bring in my other whole set of feet. Plus 10 feet, we get 10.7916 decimal feet. All right. Let me try it with, let's do this one. Let me make sure I'm not going to repeat one here. All right, so how about we try this one? So the number I have is going to be 24 feet and 24 feet and 7 3/4 inches. Okay, again, remember, we're turning it into decimal feet. Right? So There's our whole number. So our answer is going to equal 24 point something 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 decimal feet. All right. So again, once we have the 24 isolated, I'm going to take the 7 3/4 inches and convert it to feet. Again, inches to feet. We divide by 12. All right. So again, I come over here. Oh shit, sorry, I missed a step, didn't I? Right? I have to turn that into something I can utilize. Right? So let me scratch that for a quick sec. My 7 3/4 is actually going to be 7.75, right? Because remember, 3 divided by 4 gives us our 0.75, right? Our fraction is now into a decimal, and there's our whole inch. Now I have to turn this decimal inch, these inches, into feet. Divide by 12. There we go. Now I do 7.75 divided by 12, and we get 0.64583. 0.64583. The 3's go on, but I'm gonna end it there. And because we were changing it from inches to feet, right, this is now a decimal of a foot, a part of a foot, right? So there's my feet. Let me just bring it down here for clarity. 0.64583 feet. Now just add the whole feet that have been sitting in their private room, and we get 24.64583. Don't forget to let them know if it's feet or inches. Right? I'm going to give you guys one to try out. Okay. I want you guys to try this one. Try 3 foot and 6 3/16 inches. Okay. I'll pause that for a quick sec. So like I said, I snuck in that little one there while the camera was off. Camera's back on. And we'll go through this one. So again, we're looking at the 3 feet, 6 3/16. We need to turn it into a decimal foot. Okay? So again, the answer is going to be 3 point something 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 feet. So I'm going to put the 3 in a room by itself for now. So again, now I'm working on this 6 3/16. 6 is my whole inch, but I got to turn that fraction into a decimal. And again, remember, it's 3 divided by 16, right? So 3 divided by, whoops, there we go, 16. 3 divided by 16 gives us 0.1875. We're still working with our inches. We were just turning our fraction into a decimal, right? So there is our inches into decimal inches. But I still have to change that into a decimal of a foot, a portion of a foot. So I'm going to take that 6.1875, right? Remember, inches to feet. We're going to divide by 12. So when I punch that in my calculator, 6.1875 divided by 12 I get 0.515625, right? 0.515625. Now I'm in a decimal of a foot. Now that that's in feet, I'm just going to add in the whole foot that was over there, right? And I get 3.515625 feet. Okay. Did anybody get anything different for that one? All right. You guys are feeling okay about that one? Now this one might have been a tiny bit tricky. So again, the whole number or whole foot is going to be in a room by itself. So now we're dealing with just the 0 and 5/8 of an inch, right? I've got to get rid of that fraction, right? So again, it's going to be 5 divided by 8. I believe it's 0.0 something. 5 divided by 8 gets us, oh, nope, maybe I'm doing the whole number. We got our, that equals 0.625. Now, notice how there wasn't any whole inch. We only just have a fraction of an inch. So I'm going to keep that as a 0 and add in my 0.625. Again, we're still in inches. I now have to take that inch, that decimal of an inch, and turn it into feet. Inches to feet divided by 12. And we get, there it is, 0.05. 0.052083. I'm going to stop at the first 3. Again, part of a foot. Then I just bring over the whole foot that's been sitting waiting, right, plus the whole 1 to get 1.0528083 decimal feet. If this is something you didn't already know, this, oh, whoops, right here, if this is something you didn't already know, this, you would benefit to keep this one memorized, right? Because that's what we do back and forth a lot for carpentry. Back and forth between feet and inches. Sometimes it's easier for someone to yell out a measurement in inches instead of feet and inches and fractions, right? Sometimes, and in fact, I had a form work instructor that used to play games with the students. And he would say, hey, can you go cut me a 2x4 at 2 feet? And the guy would start to walk away to go do his cut. And this instructor would say, no, wait, I changed my mind. Actually, I need you to cut me a piece at 24 inches. They're the same thing, right? But he's just kind of playing to see if people are paying attention. But when you're getting into bigger numbers, it's sometimes more accurate to say, cut me at you know, the inches than the feet. Anyways, I digress. Did anybody have a hard time with this? Was this understandable, and especially with the screen on the side? Right, step by step. And like I said, I'm going to send you guys that one. So that was from feet, inches, and fractions of an inch. I want to show you if we were to go from, say, the decimal feet back in to the feet, inches, and fraction. I'm going to give you this one. All right, we'll start with this. Let's go with, now you guys would have, you know what? Let's do this one again just for shits and giggles. But we'll start it from here. So if I had 3.515625, 5, 1, 5, 1. No, I'm going to do this. 5, 1, 8, 2. I'm taking this one out of one of my notes. It should end up roughly the same as this one. All right, so I have a decimal foot here. I need to turn this into something with feet, inches, and fractions, something I can read on a tape measure. So first things first, I'm going to start by isolating that 3, right? Because I know my whole number, or my final number, is going to have the 3 as the whole. Now, I'm going to show you something that one of my instructors did with us back in the day, and then maybe I'll bring it down in a different way. I could start with the 3.5182 in my calculator, subtract that whole foot, so get rid of that 3. Like we said, we isolated it, so we're just left with the fraction, or the decimal foot. Then I take my decimal foot, remember, feet to inches, we now feet to inches, we now multiply by 12 instead of dividing. So that 5.182 times 12. That 6.2184, we're only going to grab out one piece of information here, and that's the whole 6. Right? So as it stands, I have a whole 3. Right, my 3 feet, and now I'm trying to find out my inches and fraction. So my whole 6, I'm going to drop that down, right, because I found my inches, my whole inches. Then I'm going to, while it's all still in my calculator, subtract that whole inch out of there, and I'm now left with that decimal of an inch, 0.2184. Now, from here, you might not be sure, okay, what fraction do I want to use? If we're dealing with a tape measure, I want to use an increment that I would find on my tape measure. So anything from, say, 16ths to 8ths to quarters, right? I'm going to use one of those. And I'm just going to guess at this point. I'm going to use the smallest increment on my tape measure at this point, and I'm going to go with the 16. Right? Let's see what happens if I multiply this by 16ths. All right. So I get 3.4944. Well, that 4 is less than 5, so it doesn't do anything to that 3. So 3 is going to be my numerator. And remember, it was 16ths that I used, right? I multiplied that decimal by 16ths. So that's my denominator. Right? So I want to show you something. We utilized this 3 foot 6 and 3/16 up here. But we have different decimal points here, right? It comes down to accuracy. And honestly, guys, this is why a lot of, say, furniture makers, people that have to use precise measurements, tend to stay away from the imperial measurements, meaning feet and inches. People that need that more finite measurement tend to go with metric. And different trades will utilize this as well. So I told you guys that brick masonry was my first trade that I was going through my apprenticeship. And as a mason, we for the most part stuck with the metric system, meaning it's whole numbers and decimals, right? Because it was more accurate and easier to calculate. Okay, there is a conversion, and we are going to get into that later on, probably on Thursday, where we're going to go between imperial and metric. Right now, today, we're in imperial. We're just going back and forth between inches and feet. Okay, let me give you another one to try out. I want you guys to try this one. Try Where are my notes? There we go. For the decimals. Okay, here, try this one out. So this is where you guys are starting from. I want you to convert 11.9681 feet into feet, inches, and fractions. All right, I'm going to give you a moment there.
Okay.
All right, say that again. What did you get there, Ahmed?
So 11 feet from the number given,
Yep.
and then 0.968 times 12.
Okay, yep. What was your final answer for it?
11 feet,
Mhm.
and 11 inches and 3/8.
Okay, let's give it a go. So I'm going to isolate that 11 again just for shits and giggles, right, for optics. By the way, when I'm doing this on my own, I don't go into this much detail when I'm doing my quick stuff on my own. I'm doing this more to really solidify the steps, okay? So I'm going to isolate that 11, right? So I'm left with the 0.9681 feet, but I need to put that into inches, right? Feet into inches, as we remember, feet into inches, we multiply by 12. So I'm going to take my 0.9681 multiply by 12 to find out what my whole inches are, right? My whole inches. So now my whole inches is 11, right? 11 whole inches. Now I'm going to subtract, get rid of that 11 whole inches, and I'm left with the 0.6172 that was just there, right? So now I have to find a fraction of an inch. Again, I'm going to try 16ths just because it's the lowest increment, more accurate increment on my tape measure. So times 16, and I get, 9, but the 8 right beside it bumps it up to a 10. So it's 11 and 10 sixteenths. But I can bring that 10 sixteenths down to a lower term, can't I? Right, just by splitting it in 2, I believe, dividing it by 2. So again, 11 whole inches. And now 2 goes into 10, 5 times. 2 goes into 16, 8 times. All right, so there's my inches, but I'm not done yet. I have to add it to my whole feet, right? So I bring that over. There's my 11 whole feet right there. And 11 and 5/8. What did you say yours was, Ahmed? Was it this or? And 3/8. All right, so what did you do, my friend?
I didn't multiply by 16.
What did you multiply by?
Nothing. I just took the 6 and put it over the 16.
Okay, so when you got to this point, so let's see, from the point 9681, you times it by 12 like you knew, right?
Yeah.
Right, and you got rid of that whole 11.
Yeah.
So we're good so far, and then from here, what did...
And I just had the closest one, or 10 is 6 over 16.
Oh, okay, so yeah, so here's where you tripped up. Once you got rid of your whole 11, because that's why we multiplied that by 12 to find that whole, and I'll do that one more time, 9681, right? The decimal of a foot, times it by 12 to find out what that's going to be in inches, right? When I times it by 12, that 11.6172, again, I'm going to ignore everything to the right of the decimal for a moment, because all I really needed was to find out how many whole inches does that convert to? And it converts to at least 11 whole inches with part of another inch. Right? So let me get rid of that whole inches again. I'm left with that part of an inch. But I need to know what part. Is it in 16ths? Is it in eighths? Right? And this is where I said again, I'm just going to choose an increment that's found on a tape measure. So again, 16ths, eighths, quarters, halves. These are all increments that we find on a tape measure. Right? I could also, just for shits and giggles, I could have chose to go right away and say, you know what? I'm going to times this by 8. It's still an increment on my tape measure. Times 8. So that 8 now becomes my denominator, or my bottom number of my fraction. Right? And there we get 4.9376. Right? But that 9 is influencing that 4 and rounding it up to the 5. So again, that's then where I would go with the 5/8.
Yeah.
Does that help out a little bit more on it?
Yeah, that makes more sense.
A little bit, yep. It might take a second for it all to kind of to sink in. Right? And let me just try one more, just for the sake of going through the increments on a tape measure. Right? Let me get back to, I can't remember what that number was, so I'm going to go right back to the point. 9681 feet to inches is times by 12. There's that 11. Let me get it out of my calculator, because that's the number I wanted to get back to. So I've used 16ths. I've used eighths. Let's try the 4. Yeah, let's try that quarter mark. Let's see what happens when we do that. Right? So times our quarters, times 4. Right? So now it's going to be something over 4. Right? 2.4. Well, the 4 doesn't change the 2, so the 2 remains my numerator. Okay? But again, now this can come down to a lowest term. And 2 goes into itself once, 2 goes into 4 twice. But do you see that if we go for the lower increments, it's more accurate? Because half, it's pretty close to 5/8, right? 5/8 is one little ticky section over the half. Let me show you something here. I don't know how well you guys can see it. Oh, you know what I'm talking about? So there's your half mark. Yeah, there's that 5/8. Right? I could have even gone with, say, the halves, and it might have even given me something in there. Right? But, oh yeah, the 10/16, same idea. There's 8, 9, 10. Yeah. Okay? That's why I usually, when I'm converting these decimal inches or decimals of into fractions, I always try and use the smallest set of increments or smallest set of tickies. Now, if you ever do get a tape measure that has 30 seconds, by the way, it'll usually stop somewhere in and around here. It won't go very long with the 30 seconds because it becomes very hard to read. But if I was able to multiply that decimal number by 30 seconds, it would give us even more of an accurate reading. Right? Now, honestly, if this was, say, a formwork site or even framing, 1/8 of a discrepancy is not going to make or break and destroy something. However, if I'm building furniture, shit, yeah, 1/8 of an inch is going to make a big difference. Right? So it just depends on your level of accuracy or that's needed. Like I said, formwork, I've seen gaps that you can drive a truck through and they say it's a-okay. Right? They say, well, it looks good for my house. Nah, you want to try and get as accurate as you can. I'm going to give you a few more to try out. So you guys, you can skip. Here, I'm going to move this out of the way for a sec. You can obviously skip the one that we just did, which is the one I put the check mark beside. I'll change the page in a moment, but try those first two, or first three, right? This time you're going from feet and inches into a decimal foot, right? Feet, inches, and fractions into a decimal foot. So remember, I'll give you a little hint again, that the answer is going to be 36 point something 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 feet. Okay, so give those ones a shot. I'll go on pause. Okay. So, does anybody want to be brave? Does anybody want to tell me what they may have gotten for this one up here? Yeah, go ahead. Remember, microphones are on mute. There you are, Ahmed.
36.35416.
Pretty damn close. Pretty damn close. 36.3542 is what I got, but it was only because I rounded.
Oh.
That's all.
I didn't round.
That's okay. I didn't end up saying that to you, right? I didn't give you that instruction, so that's on me. But essentially, you're right. Right? Because had I said round it off to the, say, nearest fourth decimal place. Right? So good. Did anybody get something different for that one? Everybody's good? All right. Cool. Good stuff. How about the next one? Does anybody else remember? Microphones are mostly on mute, so if you are hollering out, it's on mute. But if you're just sitting back and waiting. All right, I'll tell you what I got. I ended up getting 18.1146. Did anybody get something close to that? Again, I did a bit of rounding. All right. Anybody got something different? Because I most certainly can go through that one. Right, Ahmed, you feeling okay about that one, bud?
I got 114583.
Still, same thing, bud. 583, right? Because remember, there's the 5, and immediately to the right was the 8. Again, it's become habitual because it was something that they did with us while I was going through school, right? Going through schooling. They tended to say, you know what, round it to the nearest fourth decimal place so that you don't have this string of long numbers. But you're still correct, right? Still within that 18.1146 or 458, blah, 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 right? Good stuff. And for that last one there that's showing, I got 48.9635. Again, I took it to the fourth decimal place. Did anybody get something close? Right? And if it wasn't exactly as mine, would it have been had you have rounded it? Cool. You guys are seeming pretty okay with that. Again, like I said, forget about the 11.9681. We did do that. I want you to try these last two right there. So now we have it in our decimal feet. I want you to change it back to feet, inches, and fractions, right? So again, hint, hint, nudge, nudge. The answer is going to be 43 feet and something inches and something fractions. All right. Again, I'm going to put that puppy on pause. Okay. So this one here. Anybody want to give her a shot? All right. I don't mind being the brave soul. All right. So for this one, again, we should know right off the hop, or at least relatively close to, that the answer is going to involve 43 feet, some type of inches and sometimes type of fraction. So what I ended up getting for this one was 43 feet, 8 3/16 inches. Did anybody else? Yeah, nice, Ahmed. Everybody else? Anybody else get the same? Anybody get something different? Yeah, Aaron's good. Philman, you're good. Yeah? Awesome. Sweet beans. All right. So then for this one down here, what I ended up getting was 16 feet, 6 3/8 inches. Yes! Nice! That was good, Ahmed. Good, all right. So you guys pretty much got a handle on this, a pretty decent grasp. Like I said, I have sent you guys PDFs already while you were working on the other ones. It gives those instructions. In fact, it looks exactly like either this one or I think it's more like this one, to be honest with you. Right, and I'll give you the step-by-steps. Gives you some stuff on the other side as well. Gives you some other activities if you want to give a few more, some shots. And then it's going to get into these common conversions, right? Talking about the metric system, right, versus the imperial system. Okay, for the most part in Canada, right, we tend to work off of the metric system, right? But a lot of the trades still tend to use the imperial systems, right? And like I said, some trades will use both, and some trades predominantly stick with, say, the metric system just for simplicity, really. Okay, I'm going to stop this video and go to the next.